Good morning, 488 folks. Well, it's been over a week, I think, since your last video series. So I wanted to get started here on Chapter 4, and it picks up on where we were last week on valuing companies' tangible versus non-tangible assets. And so this particular chapter gets into a little bit more of the detail of how to value a company. And so we need to examine all the different things that go into those evaluations in the construct of, goodwill and items that are put into this package of, goodwill slash market value. Okay, so one of the first things that we start looking at is intellectual capital or intellectual property. All right, and one of those things is our employees, core competencies that the business has, like we were the first one to create the Mustang or the first one to create a Corvette, or we have particular products like different types of guitars, products that are unique to us that create a very unique and tangible value for us that are considered intellectual capital. Okay, so let's pick back up on that human capital part. So a lot of companies are product innovators like Apple, Microsoft, Oakley, companies like that, that drive unique and highly leveraged products into the market space. Well, people at Apple have a unique way of hiring and recruiting those types of people. And that in itself can be considered intellectual property or an intellectual case for intangible goodwill. Okay, so these are unique capabilities and skills that only Apple or a company like Microsoft has, and they can be valued. Social value or social capital is another thing that we can value, and that's basically the unique networks of relationships that we have. Many online companies have that type of intangible. Another place that companies look at when trying to understand the actual asset value a company has is their central knowledge base. And in this knowledge base, we look at explicit knowledge, otherwise documented, codified, knowledge that's in databases. So companies that have been competing for a long time in organizations or environments rather that are heavily leveraged by competition, they may actually have many years of information stored up that will allow them to be more competitive. And what I mean by that is they'll have competitive information, they'll have market information, they'll have historical data, and that explicit knowledge is very important for an organization that wants to move forward with that organization. So there's a value to it. Tacit knowledge is knowledge that's in the minds of the employees, walking the floors. So we put a value on these employees that are within the organization because they have all these years of experience competing in that organization in that particular market space or environment. So when a company has long tenured employees, it's a good thing in one sense because they have lots of experience that they can move on to the next organization that buys them. It may not be good in the sense that they have a lot of legacy costs, but we can get into those things later. But the difference between explicit knowledge and tacit: explicit is just stored and database and reproducible information from years of experience. And tacit information is the people within the organization that have all those years of experience working and know how to make good decisions to navigate an organization through certain different times and make it profitable. Okay, so as an organization, what are we trying to do with our human capital? We want to bring good people in, we want to develop good people, and we want to keep them. That's basically what this illustration is trying to tell you. This is what makes your organization very attractive. When you get good people, you make them better and you keep them. If you look at the top banner here where it says hire for attitude and train for skill, this is really an excellent statement, and it's something that I firmly believe in. We want people that want to learn and want to work hard. We can train you on the rest. What you've learned in school and what you've learned in your 4-year program are awesome, and we're glad you have. It gives you a great basis for the capacity to learn. We want people with great attitudes, and that's generally what organizations are constantly trying to hire for, especially if they feel that they're going to merge or they're going to be acquisitioned. Human capital is generally based on attitudes and the skill sets that they retain. All right, so I think it's pretty obvious we want to attract and retain the best possible people that we can. Well, that has to start with having a good organization first. You have to have an attractive place to work at. So companies that have a great reputation don't find it hard and difficult to attract good people. All right. That being said, there's two different modalities that we generally use, and one's recruiters. The other is working through our employees to find good people. Not often enough do good people show up at the door with a resume. So sometimes it's easier to work through our employees to find good people, and in general, it's nice to have an employee credential a candidate that's out there so that we minimize our risk in what we're hiring. And that would probably be our first step, really, in our first place, is by word of mouth, to be honest with you. And then we use recruiters. Recruiters are expensive, and recruiters are salespeople. So, yeah, they find good people generally, and if they want repeat business, they're good at what they do, and they're reliable. But they're not always 100%. So the first place we'll go is we'll network through our employees to find great people. Okay? Okay, so more on developing good human capital as one of your intangible things that your organization has that'll attract buyers. One part that really many organizations fall down on is training and development and mobility programs. Johnson Controls, formerly Prince Corporation over in Holland, used to do a fantastic job of training, developing their human capital with a really, really unique mobility program. And as I mentioned them, I'll mention this. They generally got most of these employees at 10 to 15% below market value in terms of their cost per year. So they paid them less, but they gave them more in perks. They attracted them based on a philosophy of mobility and the ability to build a real good resume that showed continued growth. And when the Prince family had that organization, they really turned out high profits because of that. JCI didn't have that philosophy, and as a result, I feel they lost a competency there that cost them some profit. So some organizations take development really seriously, and when Prince Corporation had that particular company, they did, and they're a good example of that. Okay, real quick, 360-degree evaluation feedback is a example of a way to annually or biannually evaluate your employees' progress. It's awesome because everybody you come into contact with weighs in on, Alex or Jim, and it's very important that you get an understanding of how people feel working around you. And so the outcome of that is not just a perception of your effectiveness as an employee, but also how you interrelate with other people, and it really helps develop you as a professional. This system is now pretty widely used in corporate, along with and in conjunction with an MBO program, which is Management by Objectives. Just to illustrate an example of 360 eval, this is a example out of GE's book here, and it shows you the formatting and how we use it. These are some of the measurement criteria that are used in this particular evaluation process, and as you can see, it's kind of extensive and pretty comprehensive. So one of the bigger problems that we face in organizations as leaders is retaining good people. And well, here's the deal. You can try and do it with money, but in all honesty, that's going to only work for a short period of time. Employee happiness is what's important. And what I have found is it goes way beyond the soft touch mechanisms like perks and benefits and money. They have to be happy doing what they do. And as you hire employees, you have to determine before you hire them what is going to make them happy and if they're going to be happy in your environment. So in my estimation and experience, 50% of retention is at least 50% hiring the right people that'll be happy in your organization by understanding what will make them happy and what they want to be happy. Okay, so those things aren't provided here in that slide, but I definitely want you to keep that in mind and write that down. Thanks. So what are we really saying with this particular slide? Investing into human capital is extraordinarily important, and here's some of the arguments for that. One, we can mitigate costs, we can mitigate resource acquisition, we can create more, we can solve more problems, we can create more organizational flexibility with good employees and for good employees, and this will enhance our human capital. Okay, so many times organizations want to cut their costs through their human capital first. So in other words, when organizations are in stress, they want to cut labor. And I've been in the organizations long enough to see the good, the bad, and the ugly with that. And so when you're fat and you have excess human capital, sure. When you start cutting human capital to a point where it really diminishes the uniqueness and operation effectiveness and efficiency of your organization, bad. And then companies will still do it because they're trying to acquire a short-term goal. They'll still cut into their effectiveness and efficiency to arrive at those short-term goals. And so it's very hard for organizations at times to see that, but it's very essential that they do before they cut into those very costly, we'll call them bandwidths of human capital. So just a thought on this final slide in this particular set here. Social capital. I'm going to use an example out of the automotive industry back in the 50s and 60s, okay? Back then, the Detroit area had the highest concentration of engineers and product development people ever aggregated in one area ever. And it was really interesting to read the history of all of that. And in that historical review, I read about how the engineers and product design people would meet in coffee houses and bars and restaurants and just talk about certain things that they, were thinking about working on. In a sense, they weren't giving out trade secrets, but Ford and GM employees and Chrysler employees, they'd hang out. I mean, they couldn't help but bump into each other, and they would talk about, their dreams of developing hot rods or developing cool sports cars or cool touring sedans. And this cross-pollination of ideas conceptually is what really stimulated and further developed the automotive industry in the Detroit area. And so, uniquely, these people sort of polarized themselves from one brand to the next, but it was very interesting how each company had their own brand, their own type of people. The Ford people versus the GM people were very much different types of engineers and personalities. And you'll see that today when you work with those people. They're very different. Ford people are very different than the GM people. Ford people are very much more academic based than the GM people that I'd worked with over at the Warren Tech Center. So it's really interesting. And I think that the point here is that this interaction and the sharing of ideas and thoughts, it further develops market concepts and it can bolster an organization's attractiveness. This is the last slide in this particular series, and I'll put up another one here this weekend for you.